Althea on the left there, and that's my mom on the right. And they played a match in 1958 at the Marion Cricket Club. My mom got kind of smoked 6-0, 6-1. But that was kind of her tennis claim to fame, being like a sort of a good local club player. She got to play in a couple of big tournaments, and she played Althea. And I heard this story like 30, 40 times when I was a kid, especially if my mom had had a cocktail after tennis. She'd be like, when I played Althea. So about 10 years ago, I escaped New York and headed south. I'm a New Yorker, grew up playing tennis here. And I landed temporarily in Wilmington, North Carolina, and was kind of liked it down there. And I was thinking about maybe staying. And somebody was driving me around and said, "Oh, you play tennis, don't you? Well, Althea Gibson used to live right here." And I really thought the person was making it up, and I had no idea that Althea had ever lived in Wilmington. So one thing led to the next, and to make a long story short, it piqued my interest, and I wound up making this film with a lot of help from a really, really talented team who trusted me to tell this story. And so we're really happy to share this with you tonight.
Please join me in welcoming back the director of the film, Rex Miller.
There were so many, as you saw in the credits, like 50, 60 different archival sources. So wrangling this film in the last few weeks, we might have been the very last film to get here.
Probably were.
We finished Tuesday.
Yeah. So, when you have all of these different sources between me and Rex and Judy and just dealing with getting them all in master form back into the film, and then, of course, there's issues because the frame rate doesn't match and something's longer or shorter than it was when it was badly transferred 25 years ago. So it really was a process where we had a huge team working around the clock just to get it here.
I'd love to ask Mayor Dinkins, what's your connection to the Althea story? If you can talk a little bit about sort of how you're connected to her.
I first met Althea at Shady Rest, which is a black country club in Scotch Plains, New Jersey. In fact, the first time I ever saw her, she was playing ping pong. I used to call her Champ. And we got to be good friends. My recollection of Althea is that she was sort of bitter at the end for good reason. For good reason, because as has been said, she would have been, I think it was Donald Dell who said she would be making $10 million a year, at least were she alive today. She was amazing, and I was happy to see Jeannie Ash make the point that Arthur was a great champion, but he wasn't first. Right. It was Althea. I know there are people here, we heard a lot from Leslie, and she's one of my children. But there are people here who can speak about Althea. I'm confident far more than I. Bob Ryland here, who's, what are you now, 93 or 2? 94.
Yes.
My name is Bob Ryland. I was the first black professional tennis player before Arthur Ashe. I couldn't play in the tournaments when I was coming up. I was a very good junior player. I was a national black champion 3 times. And what happened, when I turned pro, I played with Gonzalez and Holt and that bunch. But I was kind of late. I was about 35, 36. It was just too late. And I had no experience. Actually, I was supposed to go with Althea Gibson. They sent me a letter. And what happened, the people in the Cosmopolitan wouldn't sign it. See, I was supposed to travel with Althea and Hamp Richards and all that bunch. So I got turned down, and I couldn't play in the ATA anymore. Because, see, we have prejudice in our own race. I was not a Jamaican, and they didn't sign anything for me to. I couldn't even play there until the tournament. And that's the way it was, and I don't. And it changed quite a bit, but in those days we had prejudice, light skin and black skin, all that kind of stuff. So now things are changing, but I hope it changes more. I hope it does. Thank you.
Well, as a child, when I was 13, I got to see Althea Gibson. at the Los Angeles Tennis Club because I grew up in Southern California. And in those days, right after the U.S. Nationals, which we know is the U.S. Open now, there was a huge tournament out west. That was like the last tournament of the year for the players. And at 11 years old, I had decided I wanted to be the #1 tennis player in the world. And I'm a big believer, if you can see it, you can be it. And so at 13, I finally got to see the #1 tennis player in the world, Althea Gibson. Fast forward many, many years, Zina Garrison and I finally, after pleading with Fran Gray and Althea and could we come and see you, because she wouldn't see anybody. She literally would not let us come and see her. And I said, please let us come and see you. I'd call her. I'd leave messages on her voicemail, just thinking about you. How are you? God bless you. What's going on? One time she finally answered. Finally, we got the okay. Zina and I were over the moon. We got the rent-a-car. We went out there. We sat with her. We talked with her. By that time, she had a hospital bed. But you could tell she was very depressed. And I think depression was a big part of her life and never took care of it, never got any help for it. And I always appreciated everything she'd done as a champion. I remember getting her into the Superstars on television, and she won the bowling, and that was in the early 70s. She was no young chicken then. I remember when we had a tournament in 1968 at the Oakland Coliseum, my former husband and I did our first ever tournament. And I said, I want to invite Althea if she feels she's still good enough to play and not be embarrassed. And I got on the phone with her, and I knew what was important to her, and that's money. And I said, don't worry, we're not asking you to come out here for nothing. We're coming, and we made sure she got as much as everybody else. But those are the things through the years that I just felt so bad. And finally, Zina got to see her one more time after we did get to see her. But at least I got to see her much later in life. I'm so happy she allowed us to come to her home. We went down to the basement and saw all these beautiful photos. Some of them were actually in this. And Rex and your team, I just want to tell you what a great job you did. And it's great to be associated with it in any way. But to see her as a 13-year-old, she's one of my sheroes. And I love history. And fighting for equal rights and opportunities for boys and girls has been my goal since I was 12. So I really admired her, of a person of color, to see all the things and the trials and tribulations that she went through. And I'm very indebted to her. And she was the first. She is our Jackie Robinson of tennis.
So it was in 1979, and I got a call. Althea's going to be training at this club in Boston, which was owned by an African-American gentleman. And Zina Garrison, myself, Kim Sands, Andrea Whitmore, we went up to Boston to train with Althea. And she talked to us. We went out on the court. We hit balls. She talked to us. We went out on the court. We hit balls. The first half of the day, I couldn't hit a ball because I was in such awe of her presence. And I reposted what I wrote in my diary, but I'd been around Martina, I'd been around Chris, and nobody had that kind of aura that Althea did. And the one thing that she said to me that really was sort of game-changing, she said, what are your goals in this sport of tennis? And I said, well, you know, I'm kind of in the qualifying, which is like preliminary rounds, and I really want to be good enough to be in the main draw, which means you're just automatically in the tournament. And she looked at me and she says, excuse me, but with your wingspan, you need to think about winning these tournaments. So it changed my life completely. It changed my attitude. It changed everybody's life that was there that time. But she was just an amazing person. And if I could say one thing, we were in Africa at a tournament together that I was playing in, and she was doing an exhibition. And she said, I came, and if you think of like the Horn of Plenty, it's very narrow, and the next generations get more and more and more. She said, I busted down the doors for the next generation. You know, yeah, so she said that.
Thank you so much. Thank you all of you for being here.